What's up? As a filthy casual, and given the fact that I played for pretty much all this weekend, starting on Friday, I figured I'd give, my own little rundown on how I felt about the COD beta. Modern Warfare II was one of my favorite games back in the day. I believe I still have the disc for the Xbox somewhere around here. And it's a hallmark, right, in video games. So for me, it's like this new mecca of FPS better be worthwhile. And from the outset, I feel like there are some good points of interest here, and other points where it's like, oh my god, this is what they're doing, right? So let's get into it, right? First things first, though, two things. One, all of this is my opinion, right? You're going to think differently. Someone else is going to think differently. My friends already think I'm an idiot, so don't really think as the Bible of, how Modern Warfare 2 should be. These are my opinions, and that's that, right? Second thing, it's still a beta, so all of these things could all be fixed by the time the game comes out, or not. I mean, who knows? So it's just important to keep that in mind, right? But let's get into it, right? First things first, gameplay. The movement in this game is a bit slower in a sense, or clunkier, but it's not like a bad thing. I want to point that out, that it's not a bad thing. I actually kind of got used to the movement. I didn't like it at first, but over time I kind of grew accustomed to how it worked, and especially when you take into account the gun attachments and how that affects movement, you get used to it. The other thing that is very important is aiming. I feel like aiming is very wonky in this, right? The recoil on certain guns is all over the place, especially for the fact that they've added now horizontal and vertical weapon recoils. They're created by the name of Exclusive Ace. Did a fantastic video recently on Bloom in the game. Luckily there isn't any, but it's important to note that it feels like there is. Luckily there isn't. Hopefully they don't add it secretly in the actual release in October. But for now, at least in the beta, when you shoot, it goes straight how you are looking. Wherever your gun is looking, it shoots. So it may not feel like that all the time, which I think may come down to internet speeds and stuff. But top line, I think the aiming bit of a strangeness there. I had issues, especially hitting shots, because when I hit ADS, all of a sudden my gun would go that way, or go that way with aiming, as opposed to just straight where I'm trying to look. Maybe it was just a me problem, maybe it's my controller, not sure there. I've tried another controller and I still had the same issue, so not really sure what's going on there, and it's weird too, when you're shooting, the recoil is just really messy. It's not really that big of an issue, I feel like, overall. There's a ton of other things that they need to look into, but it's just one thing that I noticed. Second, there were a lot of times where I shot first and still died. Again, this comes down to the netcode, I assume, and how they remixed certain aspects of gameplay. But it's so annoying when I see the guy first, shoot him multiple times, and still die. So maybe it comes down to attachments. Maybe it's specific attachment that I'm not using correctly. Who knows? But I do think, and I'm not the only one, I do think there's some issues with recoil, aiming, and TTKs. I think the guns in this game are actually pretty good. My personal favorite is obviously the the MP5, which could only be accessed via some weird glitchiness in the beta. But MP5 is good. Hurricane is pretty cool. M4, as usual, is pretty good. What are some other cool guns? The Lackman 5.56, I believe it was called, was pretty cool. And I also like the AK-74U and the shotgun, but I didn't use those as much because you couldn't level those up in the beta. So in the beta, they added two interestingly new modes. One called Prisoner Rescue, which requires you to, I think there's 3 prisoners or maybe 2 on the map that you have to go get, bring them back to a specified area near your spawn. You get points. I think by the time you get all of them, you win. I'm not sure. Maybe it's kills. I think it doesn't matter. I think you can either kill everyone, your opponents, or save all the rescuees, and you're good. The second mode is called Payday? Knockout. The second mode is called Knockout. I don't understand why they didn't just call it Payday. Maybe that's TM'd. Anyway, doesn't matter. Knockout might be one of my most favorite times playing the beta because it required a lot of moving parts. So there is a bag of cash that you have to grab in the middle of the map, or not really in the middle of the map, but typically it's like center, right? It can either be on the right side, the left side, or the middle. You can either go get that. I think once you pick it up, you have a minute until the game ends. You can drop it, obviously, if you get shot. Now, if you or your teammates fall by getting killed, you're on the ground and you can go pick them up. Knockout really just was super fun with all of its different aspects and different gameplay. You had people who liked to camp on the bag of cash. You had people who liked to camp dead bodies, or fallen bodies, I should say. And it was fun. It was a really good time, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know if everyone's going to like it, but personally, Knockout, fun as hell. Really enjoyed that one. One thing I will say that kind of annoyed me was character models, maybe, or maybe the fact that there was no red sign over enemies. It's kind of hard to see who's who in the game. I was consistently, and that's not just me, other of my teammates too were shooting me at times, and it's hard to really tell who's the bad guy and who's not. And I wish there was a way to kind of toggle that or fix it in a way in the settings. There isn't, unfortunately, but hopefully they add a little red marker or some sort of identifier for enemies, because I would always find myself shooting my friends and just getting yopped in the back, and it's like, come on, man, like, it's just a little bit frustrating in that sense, but maybe it's just a me problem. This one's also a bit of a weird one. I feel like this really only applies to someone like me, right, a casual player. But stuns, flashbangs, even maybe Simtex took a bit too long to make their effect, and their effect themselves would be too long. So when I toss a flashbang, I kind of want it to go off within, 30 milliseconds, maybe even less, right? I feel like it takes a bit too long to go off, because I had multiple times where I would toss it, or even an enemy would toss them at me, and I would still get the kill, or they would still get the kill. And that's annoying. Like, why even bother throwing a flashbang or a stun if it's not really going to work fast enough to save your life? That's one of the big things for me. It's if I see someone sometimes, and especially if they duck around up a corner or something, I'm going to throw a stun or a flashbang. But the amount of time it takes for me to throw the stun and for it to make its effect to actually explode, that person's already killed me. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, it's annoying. It's frustrating. The gameplay side, I feel like, in the end, I'm really excited to see how all this stuff translates into Warzone 2. All of the other games, like Gunfight, I hope we have 2v2s back. Gun game is going to be sick as hell, because I feel like the guns are pretty awesome in this. And, yeah, Warzone 2, I feel like, is already getting kind of ripped up, especially with the loadouts being a big thing. And the backpack system, it's going to be like Blackout meets Warzone in a sense, or even just Apex, right? I mean, not really my jive, personally. I just kind of want to see it in action. Clearly, I didn't play it. I've only really played the multiplayer beta. But I do think that over time, all of these things can be translated well into Warzone and maybe make it better. We'll see. Anyway, let's get into the mechanics. So, weapon progression has been completely overhauled. Now you have a set gun. So say you want to get the M16. The M16 is at the top of the M4 weapon tree. So you're going to have to upgrade the M4 first, level it up. You're going to then unlock all these other guns. Same with the MP4. The MP4 is a part of the Lachman 5.56 family. So you're going to have to unlock that and boost that. And I think a lot of people are kind of iffy about it, and I have my doubts. That I think there's a negative and a positive. So the positive is you're not going to be grinding as much. You can get all these cool attachments and stuff and not have to worry about doing it for every single gun, which I think is great. But the flip side of that is the fact that maybe you don't want to use an LMG or a marksman rifle, whatever it be. Maybe you don't want to use that specific gun, but you do want that attachment. I feel like that kind of throws a wrench into the whole thing, which I think it's just kind of what you got to do, right? You just kind of have to roll with that punch. Top down, I do think it's an awesome addition. I just wish the menus made more sense. It's super confusing and convoluted to actually get around everything in the menus, especially when you're trying to figure out guns. And maybe it's just a beta, but there's no clear sign of how to do anything, right? How to upgrade stuff and where I'm supposed to go and what level I need this and that. None of it makes sense in the menus. Maybe it's just the beta. Maybe they want to keep everything kind of hush-hush until the game comes out, which makes total sense. But that needs to be addressed. Just overall navigating the menus and stuff needs to be addressed. The perk system in this game works a bit differently. Your perks are kind of acquired throughout a game. You have 2 main perks that you start the game with, and then you have a bonus perk and an ultimate perk. The bonus perk you get throughout the game over time. Ultimate perk is kind of the last one you're going to get. And I believe these work with kills and stuff. It's not like, oh, per kill, but it's like kills and also time in the game. I'm not exactly sure how the system works to a T, but I've seen before getting the bonus or even the final perk after getting kills. So I know that it has something to do with kills and stuff. So you might have a better time if you're good at if you're rushing and getting kills, you might get this third ultimate perk even earlier than others, right? Not 100% sure on that. I have to do more testing. But I do think it's an awesome addition. I know a lot of people, again, just like the weapon stuff, aren't going to like that, but it helps to kind of limit some bullshittery from the very beginning. So special abilities or field upgrades are kind of useless in my opinion. You have really 2 main ones that everyone's going to use. You have the gas one, it's like meth, battle rage, I think it's called, battle rage, and dead silence. Absolute classic. 2 of these things are, and maybe even decoy might be used here and there interchangeably. Decoy is a big one I feel like that most people are going to try out and use probably in the beginning as they're leveling up. But over time, I mean, the camera one, the munitions one, none of these other ones really seem that appealing. At least for me. I feel like they're kind of just another thing that's tacked on. I mean, most of the time I just forget that I even have a field upgrade, to be honest. I usually use it in dire straits if I really need a pick-me-up. And even then, sometimes it doesn't even help. With kill streaks, they really kind of knocked it out of the park. It's kill streaks or score streaks. You pick. Pretty streamlined. They're all great except for, I think, the drone bomb one was pretty dumb. Didn't really like that one. All of them are... They're kill streaks, score streaks. I mean, what more could you ask for? I think them implementing the dual aspect, so if you want score streaks, you're going into, say, domination or something, or even search and destroy, you prefer score streaks over kill streaks, you can do that, which is awesome. At a click of a button. Makes things much easier and much better for certain players to kind of get used to. And I personally stuck with kill streaks. I never really switched to score streaks, but maybe I'll try it out. Maybe I'll give it a shot for certain game modes. We'll see. But, yeah, nothing really to say bad about it. They're awesome. Now, the maps in this game. My goodness. I don't know what to say. The maps are clearly prioritizing camping to an extent. Maybe that's just my own, opinion, but I mean, I've seen other people say it. It's not just me. And that's sad. There's 2 good maps that I got to play. The cartel one and the museum one. Museum one I think they took out because of some flashing lights, which is totally understandable. I hope it's still in the game. They were supposed to add the Grand Prix map, but they didn't do that. I assume because the actual Grand Prix is coming up. They were worried about optics on that front. But the other maps, Farm 18, I think it was called, Farm 18, and Hotel. Both of these, my goodness, man, they're just garbage. Maybe it's me. I've seen other people say the maps are good. I think the Farm one could be cool. I really don't want to stick on this point in the maps, but the maps are just awful, horrendous in my opinion. Wall hanging is the most useless mechanic in the game. Essentially, they added a mechanic where you can jump on a wall and hang there and use your pistol to just shoot someone. The amount of time someone's going to use this are probably zil, dude. Like, it's so easy to just hop on and just get shot. It takes so long for you to get settled on the wall and pull your pistol out and stuff. There's really no point in using this. But the dive, I've seen used a ton. And I feel like that's actually going to be the most used new mechanic as opposed to the wall hang. I think the wall hang, it's interesting. It's not really going to be used that much unless you're like in a spawn. There's select times I feel like where that wall hang will actually come into use. But the swan dive, I've seen it used so much, abused to a point where it kind of annoys me. Where people will just dive and get out of my line of sight and fires. Super Super annoying. The slide is back. There's no slide canceling. There is ways to do it now. Obviously, it took less than 24 hours to figure it out. But it takes a lot of trickery with changing settings, and it's just not for me. Now, third-person mode. They've added a third-person mode multiplayer aspect where you can run around in third person, and when you aim down sights, it zooms into your first-person mode. The game just doesn't make sense. The game mode feels very tacked on and doesn't really add much else other than just a third-person mode. And my question to Treyarch is, like, who asked for this? Who genuinely was like, hey, let's try third-person mode? Because I don't see much of an evolution on how the gameplay runs, right? It just feels like a new game mode that doesn't really do much. It's just there. And I wish they had added some additional stuff around it. There's some cool stuff that they could have done with the third-person mode, beyond just adding a mosh pit of TDM and you're just in third-person mode. I just don't see the point. I just don't see the point of it. Overall impressions. I think the game's great. I really do think the game is fun. I think it has a lot of negatives, right? In fact, going into it, I'm like, oh, these are so many negatives. But in reality, there's a lot of positives. There's a lot of positives to this stuff, at least for me. I know a lot of other content creators like JGod and others were not really pleased with the multiplayer as much. But I'm having fun. I do think there are several issues that they need to address. But overall, I'm having a good time. And so are my friends. I mean, I think the number one thing is TTK. TTK makes zero sense. Please find some amenable way to fix that. Because it just does. It just doesn't make sense. It's wonky. The UI and UX in this game is so annoying to just figure out. And that's one thing they really need to address. I really hope that they do something about that. Specifically for PS5 players, here are some settings I think you should change immediately, right? First things first, the rumble, the haptics, turn those off. You don't need those. They really just get in the way and are quite annoying, I feel like, personally. Maybe other people will like it, adds, immersion to it. Do you. But for me personally, I turn those off. Turn off both motion blur options. So there's motion blur for the person, the character player, and the gun. Turn those off. You don't need those. Set your FOV slider to 100. 100's a good one. I think 120 might be better, 110, depending on how and what you're playing on. Set it to your own preference, but 100's a good baseline. Also, turn on automatic tactical sprint. This will aid you in gunfights across the board. Trust me when I say it. Essentially, it means you're not tapping L3, you're just tapping the analog stick up to run. And I think that's it. I mean, other than some issues I've seen on people complaining maybe that there's going to be some pay-to-win problems, like the ghillie suit from the last one, right? The rose skin. And guns and stuff. Like, even people in the beta already have guns that I don't even know how to get. And I'm assuming that's because of the Vault Edition. Like, I totally understand where that's coming from. COD, Activision, they need to make their money. But I truly hope that there's no incentives to pay more to make your gameplay better. I just hope that that's not a thing, because that really would piss me off and frustrate a lot of gamers, I feel like, and definitely don't want that. Beyond all the negatives, I feel like overall it's a great starting baseline, and we're gonna see how they fix things. Hopefully Treyarch takes a lot of these things, especially the UI UX, into consideration, and the TTKs. Those are the biggest ones. But hey, I don't know. What did you guys think? Are you having fun? Did you play it? Do you not give a shit? Let me know in the comments. And hey, speaking of betas, there's a beta going on right now. I believe it's to the it's next week, 26th, on Wulong. Kind of a Souls-like Nioh type like game that I might make a video on. We'll see. Played a bit of it over the weekend. Pretty fun. It's pretty difficult, but pretty fun. And yeah, I think that's it. I mean, hey, as they always say, don't drown out there, and get those kills.